How many of you have, I know most of you have, but how many of you have seen a lot of TED Talks on the internet before? Anybody here? Yeah. We wanted to bring you 3 TED Talk presenters today. They're vastly different, but yet at the same time, all of them are just going to be compelling and inspiring. We are going to do this morning. They're about 15-minute presentations each. And we're going to go one after another, and at the end, they're going to make themselves available for you to come and say hi and ask questions there at section 119. I'm not going to give you a ton of introduction about each of them because a part of their TED Talks include information about themselves, and so we don't want to take that away from them. Our first one is going to be Kyle MacDonald. Kyle owns the Guinness World Book of Records for what he's going to present to you that happened to him about 10 years ago. I first heard about it before his TED Talk on ABC, but he was on BBC News all over the world because of what he did and what he went through. You're going to have a lot of fun with him. Can we put our hands together for Kyle MacDonald? It's going to be awesome. So we're going to watch an intro video explaining a little bit about TED, and at the end of that, Kyle will be our first presenter. All right, let's watch this.
Liberty University, please welcome our Convo guests for today. Former TED Talk speakers Kyle MacDonald, Jessica McCabe, and Lucas Ramirez. If you're not familiar with TED Talks, here's an introduction. TED is a nonprofit devoted to spreading ideas worth sharing, usually in the form of short, powerful talks that are filmed and shared online with millions of people. Former TED Talk speakers include Bill Gates, Malcolm Gladwell, and Jane Goodall. It's a global community of musicians, neuroscientists, mathematicians, motivational speakers, authors, and people from every discipline and culture who seek a deeper understanding of the world. If you're starved for new ideas, check out TED and listen up, because Liberty University, today you will hear from some of the best ideas our world has to offer from Kyle MacDonald, Jessica McCabe, and Lucas Ramirez.
Good morning. My name is Kyle. I'm the red paperclip guy. You may recognize this blue t-shirt from my high school days or my TED Talk. So without further ado, it's about 10 years ago. I was 25 years old and I had a red paperclip. I was like, looked down on my desk and I'm like, what am I going to do with this red paperclip? I could put a piece of paper in it. I could do whatever I want with this paperclip. But if I didn't do anything, nothing would happen. So what I ended up doing was taking that red paperclip, I posted it in the barter section of Craigslist, and I said, my name's Kyle, this is my red paperclip. Does anybody want to trade something bigger or better for this red paperclip? Phone rang 20 minutes later. My name's Ronnie, my name's Karina. We are 2 women who own the world's most amazing pen. It's a pen shaped like a fish. And this pen was, I couldn't refuse. So I made a trade for the best fish pen in the world. And I said, wow, that was fun. That was really cool to meet people. I'll try it again. I posted this fish pen on Craigslist. Does anyone have something bigger or better than this fish pen? And Annie called me up and she says, look, I got a bunch of things around my house. I've got a banana, I got a fridge, and I got this cool doorknob. Would you like to come down and try and make a trade with me? So I ended up trading that fish pen for the doorknob, and I was well on my way to something bigger and better than a red paperclip. Now, this doorknob was a fully functioning doorknob. It worked perfectly. Does anybody out there have anything bigger or better than a doorknob? Posted it again on Craigslist, and Sean said, I have an amazing camping stove. Come down to my place. Let's have a nice dinner together, and let's make a trade. And I said, wow, Sean, that's amazing. Like, aren't you just sort of giving that thing away, though? And he's like, no, I've been trying to get rid of this thing. I didn't want to tell you before you got here, but I posted it outside in the garbage. The trash guys wouldn't even take it. This thing was not an asset. This was a liability. But, I mean, it's fully functional, and that's what you want, isn't it? And I said, absolutely. That's exactly what I want. Something bigger and better than a red paperclip, bigger and better than a doorknob. And I said, Sean, what are you going to do with the camping stove? Or, so what are you going to do with the doorknob? And Sean's like, well, I've got this old espresso maker, and it's got a broken knob, so I'm going to fix it. I took the camping stove. Does anyone have anything bigger or better than a camping stove? Sergeant David J., who was a Marine, living on a Marine base, had a generator, an electric generator. And to me, this was the ultimate. When I was a kid, A little bit younger than you guys, it was my dream to have a generator. We could go out to the forest, we could have parties, we could have bonfires, we could blast music, we have the power, you can do anything. And I realized a great lesson that one man's trash is another man's or person's treasure, but one man's treasure is most other people's trash, it turns out. And I ended up posting this on Craigslist, and nobody wanted to trade. Weeks clocked by, weeks go by. Nobody wants to trade for this piece of old piece of junk, essentially, what it turned out. It worked fine, but it was a bit beat up. It wasn't exactly that marketable. But I ended up trading it. I ended up trading that generator for I call it a party, but it was I'll let the video explain what it is, but it was a neon Budweiser sign, an empty keg, and an IOU to fill the keg. Perhaps I wasn't 21 years old or whatever, but here's the video showing the trade taking place for the generator. Everything worked fine, and I took that instant party back home, and I said, does anybody want a party? And it turns out, where I was living at the time, there was a radio host who this caught his eye, and he said, I really want to trade something with this guy. And I called him up on the radio, and he said, look, I got an old snowmobile. It's my worst snowmobile. Would you like to trade for that party? And it was Michel Barrette, really nice guy, and he said, here's the snowmobile. What do you say? We made a trade, and one thing led to another, and I wound up on national TV in Canada explaining this whole thing to the country, essentially. And the host of the TV show asked me, is there anywhere you wouldn't go to make a trade? And I thought for about 2 seconds, and I said, I'm a geography grad at university. I'm going to show off some obscure geographic knowledge here on national TV live. And I said, I'll go anywhere in the world except for Yaak, British Columbia, Canada. And the host said, what's wrong with Yaak? And I said, nothing wrong with Yaak. I've been there. I don't think I want to trade with anyone there. And one thing led to another, and this guy right here in the photo, Jeff, called me up the next morning. He says, look, I live in Cranbrook, British Columbia, which is kind of like the greater Yaak area. And I work for a snowmobile magazine. I was thinking maybe I'd like to make a trade with you. And I said, okay, what's the deal? And he's like, look, I'll trade you a trip for two to Yaak and back, but you have to come to Yaak to make the trade. And I said, oh, deal breaker. And I just couldn't lie. I said I was on TV, and I just couldn't accept that after I said I wouldn't go there. Jeff's like, look, Yaak's unincorporated. It doesn't even really exist. One loophole led to another, and I ended up convincing, I went back on the TV show and said, the TV host hypnotized me and said that I couldn't go to Yaak. The citizens of Yaak, the activists, formed a community band, and they got the children of the community. It's a town of like literally 50 people. An unincorporated area of 50 people. They got all these 6-year-old children to cry on video, and then they sent it off to the TV producers. Next thing you know, the national news program was going to Yaak, literally, to make the trade. And I was able to reverse the hypnotic spell because of the loophole caveat that I invented on the spot was, if we go to Yaak, the hypnotic spell's reversed. None of it makes sense, but it did at the time. And 2 weeks later, I find myself in Yaak on this news program. The problem was, I was 3,000 miles away with a snowmobile trying to get to Yaak. I didn't have a way there. This shirt I was wearing was this company called Cintas. It was a blue shirt, button-up shirt. And the general manager of Cintas said, look, I'll make you a trade. I want to go to Yaak for the trip. I've got this old van. Do you want to make a trade? You can put the snowmobile inside the van. I said, yes, absolutely. I didn't want a corporate sponsor, but this was a weird loophole where they weren't really sponsoring me. They were just getting rid of an old truck. And I was using this truck to transport it to Yaak. When we got there, the entire community of 50 people was in Yaak. It was an amazing national news event. And I found myself 6 months later with this giant truck. I was literally looking out in the exact driveway where I'd started with the red paperclip, and I said, I can't get much bigger than a truck. Like, unless we're getting into like aircraft carriers or floating island airports, I don't know, like what's bigger than a big truck like that? You're gonna have to go better, bigger and better, the game's called. Looked in my email, there's an offer from a guy named Brendan. I'll trade you a recording contract for this. It's like, yes, absolutely. So I drove the van all the way across the country again, traded for a piece of paper and a promise. Turns out everyone wants to be a recording artist. And Brendan was working in a recording studio. He got a cut rate deal on this thing. And here we are making the trade. The phone lines literally lit up. My ringtone was set to a horse, and it was just like a horse stable, like going off for days on end. Everyone wanted to be a recording artist. And I ended up making a trade with Jody. Jody had an amazing trade, and that was for a year of free rent in one half of a duplex in Phoenix, Arizona. And I went down to Phoenix, made the trade with Jody, and one thing led to another. The thing that I didn't realize was that she knew everyone, and she called all these news networks, and I wound up on like Good Morning America. Didn't sleep for about 3 days, and I ended up trading with her next door neighbor named Leslie for the free rate of rent, who offered me an afternoon with her boss. And at first glance, that sounds really stupid. It sounds like a really bad trade. But it turns out her boss was rock legend Alice Cooper. So she had Alice Cooper's head at her house, and I traded. Alice Cooper's management found out about this, and I wound up going up to Fargo, North Dakota, and in a rock concert hall about half this size. You know, he's famous, but Fargo's a smaller town. You guys have a much nicer facility than the Fargo Arena. In front of 4,000 people, this happened in Fargo, North Dakota. You can't really see it on the video, but that balloon was filled with blood. It splattered the whole crowd, and his fans ripped that paperclip to shreds. And Alice is a really nice guy. I know this video and this picture doesn't do it justice, but he's really nice. And he goes, "Listen, you got to make me one promise. Just don't trade me for an afternoon with the band Kiss." And I started getting all these, I can't uptrade against other recording artists, they're rock stars. I got all these crazy offers for Alice Cooper. And one guy said, "I have a Kiss snow globe. My name's Mark. I have a Kiss snow globe. I want to be a photographer. Do you want to trade?" I said, "Absolutely." I posted this on my website, and here's the comments that rolled in. "This is the worst trade that I've ever heard of, bar none," by Jared. "This is possibly the dumbest decision I've ever seen anyone make, ever, except for the people on Jerry Springer. They make stupid decisions all the time." Other people were more eloquent in their delivery. Now, I hadn't pre-planned any of the trades up to this point. However, when Mark said, "I have a Kiss snow globe," it set off this little it set off this little light bulb in my head. And that light bulb was, a guy had called me 2 months earlier. He's like, "My name's Corbin Burnson. I'm a Hollywood star. I make movies. I'm pretty well known. I'm making a movie. Do you want to trade for a role in the movie?" And I didn't know who Corbin was at the time. And he is an interesting character. But it turns out Corbin, according to his Wikipedia page, has the world's largest collection of snow globes. And we went into his snow globe lair, made the trade for the movie role, and I walked out of this snow globe lair. He has over 4,000 snow globes on display. He doesn't display his duplicates. No real collector does. And I walked out into the future, and the phone rang, and it was a guy named Bert Roach. "My name is Bert Roach. I'm the economic development officer from a small town named Kipling in Saskatchewan in Canada. And we have a house here in town that we actually own, and we were wondering if you'd like to trade with us." And I said, "Yes, absolutely." Got on the next flight, went to Kipling, and made the trade. And since it was Kipling and it was Canada, and I didn't even know this at the time, but apparently a Mountie lives in town, has the red outfit, and he can actually witness the title deed to a house. So in this next slide, you can see something that everyone didn't know exactly. We didn't know this was the real thing, but it turns out Canada is actually a living stereotype at certain times. For the housewarming party, they all came out in full regalia on horseback, and we had this is a town of 1,000 people, middle of the prairies, middle of nowhere, essentially, literally in the middle of the country. And for the housewarming party, over 3,500 people showed up. It was crazy. People came from all over the world, came to this giant event. And when we were there in Kipling, the town traded for the role in the movie The House. The town got the role in the movie. They had live auditions, live on stage, 600 people packed in a room. Corbin Burnson was there judging the auditions. And the winner of the movie role was a 19-year-old guy named Nolan Hubbard. He was working for minimum wage at the Bottle Depot. He had just graduated high school, and 2 months after that picture was taken, he was down in Los Angeles with Corbin working on a movie. He's an amazing acting talent, done all kinds of interesting things like that since then. And probably the most mind-blowing thing of this whole journey was there in Kipling, everyone I traded with, all 14 different people that I traded with through the course of a year, were all there. And most of us had never met each other. I had met everyone because I was the paperclip guy, but Jody hadn't met Corbin, and Corbin, these people hadn't met each other. But it was quite a fascinating moment to stand there, and everyone said, "Wow, can you believe that this just happened? That all these events, you wound up with a house. It was an amazing year. But don't you wish you had the red paperclip back? Imagine what that thing's worth. That red paperclip it's got to be worth a fortune now." And I looked over and I said, "Red paperclip's worth a fortune." I kind of shook my head and said, "No, it's not about what the paperclip's worth. It's the fact that I did something with it. And if I hadn't actually traded away that red paperclip, put the idea into motion, nothing over the course of that year would have happened the way it did." So if you have a red paperclip, if you have an idea, it's great to have ideas. It's the best thing ever. But even better and more surprising, that will lead to things you can't even imagine at this moment, is take that red paperclip, walk out the door, and trade it, and let your future unravel in a way that will be amazing for everyone. So my name's Kyle. That's the red paperclip story.
Great job, Kyle. Kyle also has a lot of other interesting businesses that you've started. Tell our students real quick one other thing that maybe you've worked on recently with your business.
Probably the most interesting thing I've done with my business is I walked into a corner store in New York City, and we bought everything in the store. And I didn't have any money to do it. I just credit card cash advanced it because I wanted to see what would happen if I did. And it turns out being in credit card debt is incredibly stressful and awful. But if you make a video about it, people on the internet will buy the things that you buy on credit, and it's this weird economic thing where if you do something that's interesting, it has value that nobody knows what things are worth. So that's one of my business ideas.
That's amazing. Can we thank Kyle again? He'll be at section 119 to come say hi to you if you want to meet him and talk more about some of his entrepreneurial ideas.